One thing that struck me too is you have some strong opinions on accusations of selling out and in going commercial. Did you see Motörhead as being part of that movement with Maiden and Priest and
No.
Saxon and those bands that came out at that time?
Oh, we were before then anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
we were 76, you know.
You talk a lot about getting flack from feminists in your book.
Yeah, it's not fair, really.
Yeah.
Because we took the only girl band around then, Girls' School, on their first tour.
Lemmy Kilmister, the frontman of Motörhead, is a name that resonates with rock and roll's gritty, unapologetic ethos. Known for his raspy voice, whiskey-fueled lifestyle, and relentless work ethic, Lemmy was also infamous for his brutal honesty. He didn't mince words when it came to expressing his opinions, especially about the bands he didn't respect. While most musicians might offer a polite critique, Lemmy was never shy about calling out bands he thought represented everything that rock and roll wasn't supposed to be about. His criticisms were sharp, direct, and often unapologetically harsh, cutting through the layers of commercialized, image-driven rock bands that he felt were compromising the integrity of music. In this script, we'll dive into the 5 bands that Lemmy famously hated, uncovering the reasons why these bands never earned his respect.
It first started to emerge, I think you guys were regarded as being faster than a lot of the stuff that was going on.
Well, we were probably taking more speed than anybody else, you know. Because, you know, we had a tour in those days, there was 56 shows, 53 shows in 56 days in England, right, with Saxon. And I don't give a fuck who you are. You ain't going to do that on adrenaline and being high on life. I don't care, you know. Not when you're 33 years old, you know. You're going to need a little help there, you know. But it's also purely recreational as well, you know. Who cares, you know, what the fuck, you know. People invented it, should be able to do it, you know.
And speaking of speed, right? Speed's in the name for Motörhead. For people who don't know where that name comes from.
Oh, it's old slang for speed. If you look in the Mothers of Invention albums way back, you'll find James Motörhead Sherwood. It means motor mouth as well, you know, somebody wants to start talking, which is also true of us, you know.
There's a lot of speed in your book too. A lot of hedonism going on.
Well, there's a lot of hedonism in rock and roll, as it should be. What do you expect? Introvert, you know, like existential rock people? I don't think so, you know.
So rock and roll should be about that as well then, is it?
Rock and roll should be rebellion for its own sake, with no clear goal in mind, fueled by all kinds of fun, and like with naked women all over the place backstage. I don't care what your prejudices are, I don't have them. You know, I love women, I think they should be naked backstage all the time. I love looking at them. It's great. I'm not sorry for one moment of it. I always treat them like they should be treated. I'm a gentleman, you know. But I still like them.
Mötley Crüe was the epitome of glam metal. Their over-the-top theatrics, teased hair, excessive makeup, and leather ensembles were a far cry from the raw, no-nonsense rock that Motörhead stood for. To Lemmy, Mötley Crüe wasn't about the music. It was about the image. With their chart-topping hits and arena-friendly sound, the band catered to a mainstream audience that valued spectacle over substance. Lemmy found their commercial success laughable and their image-driven approach to rock detestable. In interviews, Lemmy didn't hold back in mocking the glam metal scene. He frequently ridiculed the genre's obsession with appearance, pointing out that rock and roll was about the music, not the look. While Mötley Crüe focused on creating pop-friendly rock hits with catchy hooks and a polished sound, Lemmy's Motörhead prided itself on a much grittier, unrefined approach to music, rooted in blues and punk influences. For Lemmy, it wasn't just about playing music. It was about authenticity. Mötley Crüe's reliance on image and theatrics only deepened Lemmy's disdain for them. Despite his harsh words about their music, Lemmy wasn't completely hostile toward the band members themselves. He was friendly with bassist Nikki Sixx, who admired Motörhead's no-compromise ethos. While Lemmy didn't have any love for Mötley Crüe's music, he respected Sixx's admiration for their authenticity. Still, when it came to the sound of the band, Lemmy made it abundantly clear that Mötley Crüe's pop-influenced music wasn't something he would ever respect.
Because that shit hurts, you know. I mean, I've only got 3 little ones, you know, and they hurt like hell, I don't know.
So do you think, I mean, it's not maybe not only Motörhead fans, but metal fans seem to be more passionate than fans of any other style. I mean,
well, then it's a loyalty thing, you see, again, you know, because like if you're a fan of the top 40, you necessarily have to change your allegiance every month, you know. So, and all them unwanted singles you buy, you know, as well. All those terrible songs that from last year that you can't bear to play anymore, you know. It's a very, like, cost-intensive business, you know. But I used to like vinyl albums anyway, because you could actually read what the liner notes said and everything, you know, instead of like the magnifying glass. Yeah.
When it came to Manowar, Lemmy didn't just criticize their sound, he tore apart their entire approach to rock music. Manowar built their reputation on an over-the-top, sword and sorcery-inspired aesthetic that involved heavy theatrics and epic fantasy-driven lyrics. Their stage presence was equally dramatic, with leather-clad, muscle-bound band members striking heroic poses and wielding swords. But to Lemmy, this was a joke. Rock and roll, in his view, was about the music, not about dressing up as medieval warriors. Lemmy found the band's theatricality utterly ridiculous. Their obsession with their warrior image and self-important posturing didn't sit well with him, and he frequently mocked Manowar's grandiose performances. For Lemmy, rock music should be raw, real, and free from unnecessary embellishments. The more elaborate and theatrical the performance, the further it moved away from the essence of rock and roll. Another issue Lemmy had with Manowar was their obsession with being the loudest band in the world. While Motörhead was known for playing loud, Lemmy never saw it as a competition. To him, loudness was just a natural part of rock and roll, not a gimmick or a marketing strategy. Manowar's claim to fame for their record-breaking decibel levels felt like a shallow attempt to draw attention, and Lemmy didn't hesitate to call them out on it. At the heart of Lemmy's criticism was his unwavering belief in authenticity. Manowar, in his eyes, was all about creating a larger-than-life persona, while Motörhead simply played music with all the energy and intensity they could muster. There was no need for gimmicks, costumes, or posturing. The music alone was enough.
Did you see Motörhead as being part of that movement with Maiden and Priest and
No.
Saxon and those bands that came out at that time?
Oh, we were before then anyway. I mean, we were 76, you know. I thought we were more like a punk band, really. I mean, if you shut your eyes and forget our history, then we are a punk band. Sound more like a punk band than a, metal band to me, I always thought. Because we always had more common with the Damned than, like, say, Judas Priest, you know. But we have long hair, so you see, we have to be metal, you know. It's obvious, you know. So when you're thinking man, like. Yeah.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. Why is it that people always slot Motörhead in with? I think
that's
it's got
why.
something to do with the imagery too.
That's
right?
why.
Like
long
the
hair,
Gothic
bingo.
script and
Well, Sid used to wear a T-shirt with a swastika on it, you know. I mean, if people think I look like a fucking Nazi, and they always do, you know. Then they're in a lot of trouble, you know, in their head, because anything less like a Nazi you could not find. I've had 4 living girlfriends and they've all been black. I couldn't really introduce them to Der Fuhrer at the Nuremberg rally, could I? This is my wife, I'm Fuhrer. Oh, yeah? Yeah.
And you guys,
Lemmy's criticism of Bon Jovi was rooted in his belief that rock and roll should never compromise its rebellious spirit. Bon Jovi, with their polished sound and radio-friendly hits, represented everything Lemmy despised about the mainstream rock scene. Their anthemic choruses and catchy hooks were designed to appeal to a mass audience, and Lemmy found that approach lacking. To him, Bon Jovi's music was overly commercialized, safe, and devoid of the raw, untamed energy that made rock and roll so powerful. Lemmy's disdain for Bon Jovi was particularly focused on their songwriting. While Bon Jovi's hits often revolved around love, hope, and perseverance, Lemmy found their themes to be too sentimental and soft. For Lemmy, rock music wasn't about writing love ballads or creating feel-good anthems. It was about tapping into the energy of rebellion and pushing boundaries. Bon Jovi's lyrics, which were designed to be relatable and accessible, struck Lemmy as weak and formulaic. Another point of contrast was the band's image. While Motörhead's aesthetic was built around a tough, no-nonsense biker look, Bon Jovi embraced a glammed-up, polished rock star persona. The big hair, tight pants, and glossy music videos epitomized the kind of commercialized rock that Lemmy couldn't respect. In one famous moment of blunt honesty, Lemmy remarked that he could write better songs than Bon Jovi in his sleep. To him, Bon Jovi's music was nothing more than radio-friendly fluff, designed for the masses and lacking the edge that real rock demanded. Despite their mainstream success, Bon Jovi never earned Lemmy's respect, and he made it clear that their brand of rock simply wasn't for him.
Of course, the classic question is, you guys have always appealed to both of those crowds, right?
Yeah,
The
lucky.
punk kids and the metal kids, too.
Well, like I said, we sound like punk if you shut your eyes, so I'm sure there are all these punks in the crowd like not looking at the hairdo, you know.
The long hair thing, you mentioned long hair a lot in your book, I was struck by.
No, it used to be rebellious before it became like the status quo, you know. But still, like your length and my length still ain't the status quo. People still edge away from you in restaurants, don't they, you know. And he smokes too, you know. My God.
Why do you think that Motörhead had a harder time cracking America?
Oh, we're not cute enough. That's the problem with that, yeah. And we don't sing, you know, songs that you can sing along to in bars, you know. Or play at your wedding, you know.
Lemmy's relationship with Metallica was complex. On the one hand, he respected the band for their early work and was a key influence on their sound. Metallica's thrash metal roots, with their raw aggression and fast tempos, aligned with Lemmy's philosophy of rock music. In fact, Metallica often spoke about how much they admired Motörhead, covering their songs and paying tribute to Lemmy's uncompromising style. However, as Metallica's sound evolved, Lemmy became disillusioned with their shift towards a more mainstream-friendly approach. The turning point came with Metallica's Black Album in 1991, which marked a shift towards slower tempos and a more polished production. While the album was hugely successful, Lemmy wasn't convinced it represented the true spirit of thrash metal. But it was Load, 1996, and Reload, 1997, that really disappointed him. These albums abandoned thrash almost entirely, opting for a bluesier, hard rock-inspired sound that Lemmy saw as a betrayal of their original spirit. He felt that Metallica had compromised their aggressive, high-energy style for the sake of broader appeal, something Lemmy could never respect. Despite this, Lemmy never completely turned his back on Metallica. He remained friends with the band and continued to support them in various ways. However, he was vocal about his disappointment in their change of direction. Lemmy preferred their earlier, thrash-driven material and was particularly critical of their later experiments, which he felt diluted the raw power that made Metallica great. Lemmy's critiques of Metallica weren't born out of animosity, but out of a deep respect for their early work. He just wanted them to stay true to the raw energy that initially made them stand out in the thrash metal scene.
You talk a lot about getting flack from feminists in your book.
Yeah, it's not fair, really. Because we took the only girl band around then, Girls' School, on their first tour, you know. Nobody else would touch them with a yardstick, you know. And we took, even the rest of my band said, oh, they're girls, you know. I said, fuck that, they're good, you know. It doesn't matter, you know. And people would always say about Kelly, oh, she's pretty good for a girl. I said, she's better than you, man, you know. She's better than you. Although, I tell you what, they have as much fun on the road as I ever seen a guy band have, you know. I mean, they're just graceful, you know what I mean? And they drink you under the table too, those chicks.
I wanted to ask you about Motörhead fans, and something you comment in your book is actually...
Do you have their names? Sorry. Okay.
The loyalty of the fans. You mentioned that.
And we got
We can
people.
talk about that.
We got people who have every visible surface of their body tattooed with the Motörhead logo, you know, and like all the album sleeves. One guy in Germany's got 3 faces on his calves of his legs, man. He's got, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'd do it, you know what I mean?
Lemmy's disdain for the Eagles was rooted in a fundamental difference in how they viewed rock and roll. The Eagles were synonymous with the laid-back, polished sound of California rock in the 1970s. Their smooth, radio-friendly hits like Hotel California and Take It Easy epitomized the soft rock era, which Lemmy found utterly devoid of the energy and danger that he believed defined rock and roll. For Lemmy, rock wasn't about smooth vocal harmonies or acoustic guitar strumming. It was about power, rebellion, and raw energy. He saw the Eagles as a product of the mainstream music industry, catering to the masses with their accessible, polished sound. The Eagles didn't represent the rebellious, gritty side of rock that Lemmy had spent his career championing. Lemmy also disliked the way the Eagles were part of the corporate rock machine, selling millions of albums and dominating the airwaves. He had no problem with success, but he despised the idea of compromising musical integrity to achieve it. In Lemmy's eyes, the Eagles had sold out by creating music that was designed to be inoffensive and pleasing to the widest possible audience. The Eagles' massive popularity only fueled Lemmy's disdain for them. Their music was everywhere, from bars to movie soundtracks, and to Lemmy, it represented everything that was wrong with rock music. It was commercialized, sanitized, and ultimately forgettable. For Lemmy, rock and roll should be unpredictable, dangerous, and full of life. Qualities that the Eagles simply didn't embody.
One thing that struck me too is you have some strong opinions on accusations of selling out and in going commercial.
Well, see, commercial is a funny word to use as an insult, because being commercial just means that more people bought your music, which is what you're trying to do when you set out to make most people as possible hear your music. That's why you do it, you know. And anybody who says, I don't want fame and fortune, is full of shit, man. I don't give a fuck who they are. You know, that's rubbish. If you want nobody to hear your music, stay in the living room. Nobody will. No problem, you know. But don't be out on stage showing off and tell me you don't want nobody to hear it.
Well, that's one of the strange things about metal, right? There's that current which is about not being commercial, not...
Oh, no, inverted snobbery, it's called. Yeah. You know, it's like the communist revolution, you know, everybody who's got money must be a cunt, you know. It's not true, you know. It's not that way. Any generalization is rubbish, you know. So if you say they're sold out, maybe they just got lucky, you know, and you can't stand it anymore because of your inverted snobbery, right? You can't stand it that they're not your baby anymore, that only you and 5 of your mates know about them, you know, because that's a great attraction when you're younger, you know.
That's right. You want something that's your own.
Yeah, you want to, and you can tell people about it, and then they'll know, but you select them, you know, who deserves to know. And if you get really successful global, then, you know, all that's out the window, isn't it, you know. We had a kid, as soon as we got a recording contract, before we had any success at all, with Stiff Records, he stopped coming to our shows. He said we sold out, just getting a recording contract. I said, motherfucker, what do you think we was doing it for? So we'd be unknown and die in poverty? No, that's not what I got into rock and roll for, you know.
Lemmy Kilmister's critiques of these 5 bands were far from personal attacks. They were reflections of his uncompromising belief in authenticity and raw energy in rock and roll. Mötley Crüe, Manowar, Bon Jovi, Metallica, and the Eagles all represented aspects of rock and metal that Lemmy felt had been watered down or commercialized for mass appeal. To him, rock music was about rebellion, authenticity, and never compromising for commercial success. Whether it was the image-driven theatrics of glam metal, the over-the-top fantasy of Manowar, or the polished, radio-friendly sound of Bon Jovi, Lemmy made it clear that he valued substance over style. Despite his harsh words, Lemmy's critiques were not born out of hatred, but out of a fierce commitment to preserving the true spirit of rock and roll. his music, and his words. Continue to inspire those who believe that rock should always remain loud, fast, and uncompromising.